I still recall the cold rush that hit me that day. You know that feeling when you're so furious that you become strangely calm? Like your body goes into autopilot mode. That's exactly where I was when I walked into La Fiore, the restaurant my ex-husband Lucas and I used to visit all the time. It was his favorite place, and he'd taken her there for their first date, long after we'd split. It was also where they were now celebrating the finalization of our divorce and the news of their baby on the way. Just thinking about it now makes my hands tremble. Sorry, let me backtrack a bit. 3 years ago, I was Julia Roberts No, not the actress, but married to Lucas Roberts, a regional sales director for a major pharmaceutical firm. We'd been together for 7 years. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? We had our comfortable routines, our inside jokes, and our dreams for the future. At least that's what I thought. The first sign that things weren't quite right came when Lucas started staying late. Like really late. It's almost every Thursday. He'd come home smelling like he'd showered at the gym. It wasn't too unusual since he often claimed that long meetings stressed him out. And hitting the gym helped him unwind. New cologne should have been my first red flag, I thought. Who wears cologne to the gym at 8 p.m.? You know, business is really picking up, he'd tell me, kissing my forehead absent-mindedly. New product launch. You know how it goes. Huh? And I believed him. That's what kills me the most. Now, looking back, I really did believe him. It was my friend Emily from the book club who saw them first. She didn't want to be the bearer of bad news, but she couldn't ignore what she had witnessed. She saw them at a wine bar across town, looking so comfortable, her hand on his leg, his fingers running through her hair. I'll never forget her words. "I'm so sorry, Julia," she whispered, clutching my hand across the kitchen counter. "But I thought you should know." I remember nodding, mechanically, my head moving up and down like some kind of lifeless toy, while inside, my world fell apart. When I confronted Lucas that night, he denied it at First Classic. Then, when I mentioned that Emily had seen them, his story shifted to something more minimizing. "It's nothing serious, Julia. Just a work thing. You and I have been so distant lately." Distant? I'd been working 60-hour weeks at my law firm, pushing for a partnership, and he knew that would only be temporary. We talked about it. He'd told me he supported me. But after 3 hours of back and forth half-truths, and watching the man I loved turn into a stranger, he finally admitted it. Her name is Sophie. She's our new marketing director. Of course, she was Sophie Carter, 15 years younger than him. A former college athlete, effortlessly beautiful. The kind of woman who could make other women feel instantly small. I'd met her once at a company picnic months earlier. She'd been friendly, asking about my job and commenting on my earrings. All while, apparently, calculating her move to slide right into my marriage. "It just happened, Julia." I didn't plan it, he'd said. Affairs don't just happen. They're a series of decisions, tiny moments where you could walk away, but don't. I spent that night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, remembering our wedding vows, how sincere. It seemed how I believed him when he promised me forever. I thought that was rock bottom, but I was wrong. 6 weeks later, just as I was trying to decide whether to go to marriage counseling or call a divorce lawyer, Lucas came home with an expression I'll never forget. Part panic, part excitement. "We need to talk," he said, carefully placing his keys on the counter like they might explode. I remember every detail, the fading sunlight through the kitchen windows, the smell of pasta. I was cooking his favorite, ironically, because I thought maybe a nice dinner could bring us together. The distant sound of children laughing outside. "Sophie's pregnant," he said. 2 words that shattered whatever was left of us. "It's mine," he added, unnecessarily, as though I might have thought otherwise. I didn't cry, not then. I just felt an emptiness, like someone had scooped everything out of me. "How far along?" My voice didn't even sound like my own. It had been almost 3 months. The timeline told me everything. This wasn't just some recent slip-up. This had been happening for months before I even knew. While I was working late to build our future, they were building one without me. He moved out that weekend, saying he needed to do the right thing by Sophie and the baby. As if abandoning your wife was ever the right thing. The divorce proceedings were swift but brutal. Lucas wanted it done quickly. No surprise there, with a baby on the way. I watched him transform from the man who had once held me, through my father's funeral, to someone who argued through his lawyer about who should keep our wedding china. He didn't even want it. He just didn't want to seem like the bad guy. Giving up everything. But here's the thing about being a lawyer yourself, you know how to prepare. And sometimes you notice things others miss. The first red flag appeared during a settlement meeting. Sophie came along already showing in a tight dress that seemed designed specifically to twist the knife. But it wasn't her presence that caught my attention. It was the way she kept checking her phone, stepping out to take calls. Something felt off. She's just nervous about the baby, Lucas explained. But the look in his eyes suggested he wasn't entirely convinced himself. The second flag came when I overheard her talking to someone in the hallway outside our mediator's office. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but her voice carried. "Don't worry about him," she was saying. "He has no idea. Keep it together for a few more months." At the time, I assumed she was talking about the stress of the divorce on Lucas. Later, I'd understand it was something else entirely. The third flag was the most unsettling. At a required court appearance, I noticed something strange. Sophie actively avoiding James, Lucas's best friend from college. James had shown up to support Lucas, which wasn't unusual. They'd been inseparable since freshman year at Stanford. What was unusual was how Sophie physically turned away when James approached. How she suddenly needed to use the restroom when he joined our awkward pre-hearing group in the hallway. I'd always liked James. He was that rare kind of friend who stayed close through all of life's transitions, college to career, bachelor to married man. He'd been Lucas's best man at our wedding, giving a toast that made everyone laugh and cry. He was at our house for holidays, birthdays, and Super Bowl parties. He was a constant presence, reliable and genuine. So Sophie's obvious discomfort around him struck me as deeply strange. James seemed different, too subdued, almost unable to look Lucas in the eye. I filed these observations away, not yet understanding their significance. 3 days after that court appearance, my doorbell rang at 9:30 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. Since Lucas left, my social circle had contracted significantly. It's amazing how many couple friends suddenly have scheduling conflicts when you're newly single. I peered through the peephole to see James standing on my porch, shoulders hunched, hands jammed in his pockets. He looked terrible unshaven, hair disheveled, dark circles beneath his eyes. James opened the door, genuinely confused. We'd been friendly over the years, but he'd never visited me alone. "Is everything okay?" He looked up, and I was startled to see his eyes were red-rimmed. "No," he said simply. "Nothing's okay. Can I come in? I need to talk to you." I stepped aside, leading him to the kitchen, where I'd been sorting through bills. The house felt too big now, too empty, but I refused to be the one to move out. This was my home too. Damn it! "Do you want something to drink?" I offered automatically. "Coffee? Wine? Something stronger?" "Whatever you're having," he mumbled, sinking into a chair at my kitchen island. I poured us both a glass of the Cabernet I'd opened earlier. James took his with a shaking hand and immediately drank half of it. "I've been trying to do the right thing," he began, staring into his glass as if trying to figure out what that even was anymore. "But I can't sleep. I can't eat. I can't look at myself in the mirror." I waited, sensing whatever he needed to say required patience. "It's about Sophie," he finally said, "and the baby." My stomach twisted. "What about them?" James set his glass down and covered his face with his hands. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. "The baby might be mine." The words hung in the air between us. I gripped the edge of the counter to steady myself. "What are you saying, James?" He took a deep, shuddering breath. "Sophie and I, We were together before she and Lucas. At least, I thought it was before. Now, I'm not so sure about the timeline. You and Sophie. I couldn't keep the shock out of my voice. James had always seemed so steady, so loyal. It started at the company Christmas party last year, James continued. Lucas left early. He had that flight to Chicago the next morning, remember? I nodded, still trying to wrap my mind around what he was saying. Sophie and I ended up talking at the bar. One thing led to another. Not proud of it, it was supposed to be a one-time thing, but it wasn't, James said miserably. We kept meeting up for about 2 months. Then suddenly, she ghosted me. No explanation. Next thing I know, Lucas is telling me they're seeing each other. I was stunned. What did you say? What could I say? Hey man, I was sleeping with her first. I filled in the silence. So, you said nothing? I thought it was over between us, James defended weakly. I figured she chose him over me. It hurt, but Lucas is my best friend. I wanted him to be happy. Till you found out she was pregnant, I concluded. James nodded, finishing his wine in one long swallow. The timing it could be either of us. And lately she's been texting me again, calling late at night, saying things like how she made a mistake choosing Lucas, how we should talk about options. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages before handing it to me. I read through the texts from Sophie, my shock deepening with each one. This should have been our news to share, not mine and his. We need to talk about what happens after the baby comes. I made a mistake. Lucas doesn't need to know everything. We could work something out. It's the most recent message from just yesterday. Read, the baby's starting to kick. Don't you want to feel it? I handed the phone back, feeling sick. Have you told Lucas? How can I? James looked anguished. It would destroy him. He's so excited about being a father. He's reading baby books, painting the nursery. He bought a minivan, for God's sake. But if the baby isn't his... I trailed off, and James nodded. That's why I'm here, he interrupted. I don't know what to do, but I can't keep living with this. And I thought you deserved to know, after everything Lucas put you through. I sat down across from him, trying to process it all. Do you have any proof besides these texts? James hesitated, then nodded slowly. I have pictures from when we were together. And there's a hotel receipt we stayed at the Grandview Hotel downtown one weekend when Lucas was at that sales conference in Chicago. The dates line up with when the baby would have been conceived. According to the due date, Lucas told me. Mind raced, piecing everything together. And there's more, I assume, I said slowly. James looked surprised. What do you mean? You wouldn't be here just because of old hotel receipts and some suggestive texts? I continued. Something else happened recently. He stared at me for a long moment, then reached for his phone again. She sent me this 2 days ago. He pulled up a video message and pressed play. Sophie's face filled the screen, her expression intimate, secretive. Hey you, she said, I miss seeing you. We need to figure this out before things get too complicated. The doctor says it's a boy, by the way. He looks just like you in the ultrasound. I swear he has your nose. She laughed softly. Lucas doesn't suspect anything. He's so caught up in the daddy fantasy. He hasn't even questioned why I won't let him come to the appointments anymore. We need to talk, James, for real. Call me. The video ended, and I felt a cold rage building inside me, both for myself and for Lucas, whatever he had done to me. He didn't deserve this level of manipulation. I wish I'd never met her, James whispered. She's destroying everything. I looked at him thoughtfully. Does she know you have all this? The texts, the video, the receipts? No, he said. I've just been collecting it. I guess I thought I might need it. Trying to figure out what to do. A plan began forming in my mind, not for revenge, at least not entirely, but for the truth, for clarity, for consequences. I heard through the grapevine that they were having a celebration dinner. At Bella's, I said carefully, once the divorce is final, to celebrate their new beginning. James winced. Yeah, Friday night. Lucas invited me, but I told him I couldn't make it. I just couldn't stomach it. I reached across the table and took his hand. What if we both went? What if we brought all of this with us? He pulled back, eyes wide. You want to confront them publicly? I want the truth to come out, I corrected. In a way that can't be denied, minimized, or explained away later. Don't you think Lucas deserves that much? James was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded slowly. Yeah, he does. But this will destroy our friendship. Your friendship was destroyed the moment Sophie came between you, I said gently. This is just acknowledging the wreckage. The next few days passed in a blur of preparation. James sent me everything he had, dozens of texts, emails, photos, and videos, all pointing to one inescapable conclusion. Sophie had been involved with both men simultaneously, and the baby she was carrying was almost certainly James's. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source, Sophie's own sister, Audrey. I'd only met Audrey a couple of times at company functions, but she always seemed different from Sophie, more grounded, less flashy. When I reached out to her explaining what we'd discovered, she wasn't surprised. Sophie's done this before, Audrey told me over coffee, her voice barely above a whisper. In college, with her economics professor, then with her boss. At her first job, she targets men with potential men who can give her the lifestyle she thinks she deserves. And the baby. I asked, already knowing the answer. She's been telling me it's James's. Audrey confirmed, looking down at her hands. Lucas has better long-term prospects, but she's keeping James on the hook as insurance. She looked up at me, regret in her eyes. Should have said something sooner. She's my sister, but this has gone too far. Audrey gave me her own evidence, screenshots of conversations where Sophie had explicitly laid out her plan to secure her future with whichever man proved most advantageous. There was even a photo Sophie had sent Audrey of the ultrasound with a caption, "Baby looks just like James." Thank God Lucas's nose would be a tragedy to pass on. She joked. The night before the dinner, James called me, clearly on the verge of backing out. Maybe we should just talk to Lucas privately, he suggested, his voice strained. This public confrontation feels cruel. I understood his hesitation. It does feel harsh, I acknowledged. But think about it from Lucas's perspective. If we tell him privately, Sophie will have time to spin a counter-narrative to manipulate him further. You've seen how she operates. Yeah, he admitted reluctantly. Honestly, part of me wants witnesses. Not for revenge, but for accountability. I spent months being the subject of whispers and pity, while Lucas paraded around with a pregnant girlfriend. Some truths deserve to be acknowledged publicly. After a long silence, James sighed. You're right. I'll meet you there tomorrow night. Barely slept that night, questioning my decision. Was I doing this for justice? Or for vengeance? Was there even a difference at this point? By morning, I'd settled into a strange calm. Whatever my mixed motives, the truth deserved to be heard. I chose my outfit carefully, not to compete with Sophie, but to armor myself. It's a simple navy blue dress I'd worn to argue important cases in court. My power dress. It's professional, confident, unassailable. I arrived at Bella's 10 minutes before the agreed time, clutching a manila envelope containing everything we'd collected. James was waiting outside, looking like he might be sick. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted when I approached. I squeezed his arm. It's the right thing, even if it's the hard thing. The hostess recognized me. Of course. She did. Mrs. Calloway, she said, smiling warmly, but her face froze the moment she saw the man beside me. Miss Reed, she said, then caught herself. I mean, Mrs. Smith. She looked at me curiously. Are you meeting someone for the Calloway event? I replied calmly, yes. Her eyes widened slightly. Oh, I'm not sure if it's fine, I assured her. We expected that. She led us toward the private dining room at the back, her discomfort evident in her stiff posture. I could hear the laughter and chatter before we reached the door. Happy sounds, celebration sounds. But when we walked in, the conversations didn't stop immediately. It took a moment, like when you watch a wave recede from the shore, the silence spreading gradually, till the whole room fell quiet. Lucas saw us and froze, his champagne glass halfway to his lips. Sophie was beside him, clutching his arm possessively, visibly pale. Avery, Lucas managed, his voice strained. His eyes shifted to James, confusion replacing his initial shock. James, I thought you couldn't make it. Change of plans, James said, his voice surprisingly steady. I smiled, not angrily, not sadly, just a composed, small smile. We thought we should deliver our wedding gift in person. Confusion crossed Lucas's face. Several guests shifted, uncomfortably. The divorce was finalized yesterday, Lucas said carefully. There's no need for... Oh, I know, I interrupted, stepping further into the room. That's why the timing seemed perfect. You're celebrating new beginnings, right? Well, I thought you deserved to begin with the truth. Sophie's hand tightened on Lucas's arm. I think you should leave, she said, her voice brittle. This is a private party. I could see the slight swell of her belly beneath her red dress, 5 months along now. A child that Lucas believed was his. The future he had destroyed our marriage to pursue. We'll leave soon enough, I promised, opening the folder I'd brought. But first, I think Lucas deserves to know exactly what he's celebrating. Lucas looked between James and me, weariness creeping into his expression. What's going on? James stepped forward. I need to tell you something, man. Something I should have told you months ago. James, don't, Sophie hissed, but he continued as though she hadn't spoken. Sophie and I were together before you two started dating. James said, his voice low but clear in the silent room. At least, that's what I thought. Now, I'm not so sure about the timeline. Lucas's face hardened. What are you talking about? We were seeing each other for months, James continued. It started at the Christmas party, when you left early for that Chicago trip. Lucas's eyes darted to Sophie, who was shaking her head frantically. He's lying, she insisted. We barely knew each other then. I wish I was lying, James said sadly, but I have proof. Texts, photos, receipts from hotels where we stayed together, including the weekend you were in Phoenix. The room erupted in whispers. Several guests looked away, embarrassed to be witnessing such a personal implosion. Show me, Lucas demanded. His voice flat, James handed him the phone, open to a gallery of evidence. I watched as Lucas scrolled through, his expression shifting from disbelief to shock, to devastation. This doesn't prove anything about the baby, Sophie tried, desperation creeping into her voice. So what if James and I had a thing? It was over before you and I got serious. Then explain this, I said quietly. Pulling the ultrasound photo from my folder, the one Sophie had sent to her sister with that damning caption, Lucas took it with trembling hands, reading the caption once, twice. Then he looked up at Sophie, with such raw pain in his eyes that I almost regretted our decision. Is this true? He asked, his voice barely audible. Is this baby James's? The silence that followed was deafening. Someone in the back of the room mumbled an excuse and slipped out. Then another, and soon a steady stream of guests was making for the exitant comfortable witnesses to the unraveling of a lie. Sophie, to her credit, didn't crumble immediately. She tried denial first. No, they're making this up. She insisted, reaching for Lucas's hand. He pulled away as if her touch burned him. They're bitter, she said. They're trying to ruin our happiness. The room's atmosphere shifted as James quietly continued presenting the evidence, the video message about the baby, having his nose, the texts about their options after the birth, the hotel receipts that precisely matched the conception timeline. Ask her about why she won't let you come to the doctor's appointments anymore. James suggested softly, Lucas's face, already pale, went ashen. Is that true? He asked, looking at Sophie. Her strategy shifted instantly. I didn't understand the pressure I've been under, she cried, tears appearing in her eyes. I was confused. I didn't know what to do. You knew exactly. What you were doing, I corrected, calmly placing Audrey's statement on the table. Your own sister confirmed your plan, how you were keeping James as insurance while securing Lucas's financial stability. Sophie gasped, genuine shock replacing her calculated tears. She would never, I confirmed. I said coldly. She said, and I quote, "This has gone too far." Lucas collapsed into his chair, pressing his palms against his eyes. When he looked up, tears streamed down his face, ugly, broken sobs shaking his shoulders, his breath coming in gasps. I left my wife for you. He choked out, looking at Sophie. I threw away my marriage for this, for a lie. Sophie's expression hardened, and the mask slipped completely, revealing the calculating woman beneath. Oh, please, you were looking for an exit from your boring marriage long before I came along. I just gave you an excuse. Her words hit me like a physical blow, but I maintained my composure. This wasn't about me anymore. It was about truth, having its moment, however painful. Where were you going to tell me? Lucas demanded, looking between Sophie and James. After the baby was born, were you ever going to tell me? James looked genuinely remorseful. I've been struggling with this for weeks, man. I didn't know what to do. You were so excited about being a dad, so you were just going to let me raise your child? Lucas's voice rose, anger breaking through his grief. Let me believe this lie forever. I didn't know for sure, James defended weakly. Not until recently. Recently? Lucas echoed. How recently? James glanced at me, then back at Lucas. The ultrasound when she sent me that picture saying the baby looked like me. That's when I knew I couldn't keep quiet anymore. Sophie scoffed, gathering her purse. This is ridiculous. I don't have to listen to this. She turned to Lucas. Are you coming or what? The remaining guests watched in uncomfortable silence as Lucas stared at Sophie as if seeing her for the first time. No, I said finally. I'm not coming. Not now. Not ever again. Sophie's confidence wavered. This clearly wasn't how she expected the evening to go. Fine, she snapped. Your loss. There are plenty of other men who would be thrilled to be with me, like James. Lucas asked bitterly. James flinched visibly at that. Maybe, Sophie shot back. At least he knows how to have fun. You were already turning into a boring, predictable husband, just like you were with her. She jerked her head toward me with that parting shot and stormed out, leaving a stunned silence in her wake. I should have felt triumphant. This was the moment I'd planned for. Sophie. Exposed, Lucas faced with the reality of his choices. But watching him sitting there, broken and humiliated, I felt only a profound sadness for what we'd all lost. I should go, I said quietly, gathering the documents. Lucas caught my wrist. Wait, he said, his voice rough from crying. The remaining guests took this as their cue to tactfully exit, mumbling awkward goodbyes until only Lucas, James, and I remained in the private dining room. How long have you known? Lucas asked once we were alone. About a week, I admitted. James came to me unsure of what to do. We decided you deserved the truth. Lucas nodded slowly, processing. Then he turned to James, the weight of a lifetime of friendship hanging in the balance between them. You slept with her while knowing I was interested in her? Lucas's voice was flat. James shook his head. It started before I knew you were seeing her. Swear. Then when you told me about you two, I backed off immediately. But you didn't tell me. Lucas's eyes were filled with pain and disbelief. You were already falling for her, Lucas exclaimed. You seemed happy, happier than you'd been in a long time. James replied quietly, Yeah, because I thought she was carrying my child. I thought I was starting this amazing new chapter. He ran his hands through his hair. God, I'm such an idiot. You're not an idiot, I said gently. You were deceived. We all were. I threw away everything good in my life for a lie, Lucas whispered, reaching for my hand across the table. I'm so sorry, Julia. So incredibly sorry. I let him hold my hand for a moment, feeling the familiar warmth of his skin against mine. Once, that touch had meant safety, home. Now, it felt like touching a photograph, two-dimensional reminder of something that used to be real. I was wrong, he continued, his eyes pleading. So terribly wrong. Maybe ... Maybe this is a sign. It's a chance to start over, to try again. And there it was, the moment I'd both anticipated and dreaded. It's a part of me that had fantasized about this exact scenario for months should have been rejoicing. But instead, all I felt was a quiet certainty that that chapter of my life was truly finished. James cleared his throat awkwardly. I should give you to some privacy, he mumbled, turning to leave. No, Lucas stopped him. We're not done yet. James, you and I don't know what we are anymore. James nodded sadly. I understand I betrayed your trust. Even if it was. Before you two were official, I should have told you everything once I knew you were serious about her. Yes, you should have, Lucas agreed, the anger in his voice mingling with grief. But that wouldn't have changed what she did. That's on her, not you. The three of us sat in silence for a long moment. The wreckage of our intertwined lives was spread out before us like debris after a storm. Finally, James spoke. What happens? Now with the baby, I mean. Lucas looked down at his hands. I guess that's between you and Sophie. I'm out of the picture. I'll do the right thing, James promised. Whatever that is, Lucas nodded distantly. You always do, eventually. The words weren't quite forgiveness, but they weren't a complete rejection either. It's just an acknowledgement of a complex truth. Lucas, I said gently, withdrawing my hand from his. What happened tonight doesn't change the past year. It doesn't erase your choices. I know that, he insisted. But people make mistakes. It's terrible, stupid mistakes. We had 7 good years together. That has to count for something. I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to find the man I'd married in the tear-streaked face before me. He was still handsome, still had those eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, but something essential was missing. A thrust. The certainty that this person would always choose me, especially when it was difficult. It does count for something, I agreed. Counts for a lot, actually. Those years shaped both of us. But they're behind us now. It doesn't have to be, he pressed, a desperate edge to his voice. We could try again, counseling afresh. Start, I know I don't deserve it, but it's not about deserving, I interrupted gently. It's about what's right for both of us going forward. I hesitated, then decided he deserved the whole truth. I've been seeing someone. Lucas's face fell. Who? Logan Reeves, I said, the recognition in his eyes immediate. Logan and I had dated in college before I met Lucas. We'd reconnected at a conference. 6 months after Lucas moved out both. Of a single, both a little wiser from our past relationships. Your college boyfriend? Lucas's tone sharpened. The one you said was the road not taken? I winced at having those words thrown back at me. I'd shared that sentiment during a late-night conversation early in our marriage, not expecting it to be weaponized years later. Yes, I acknowledged. We bumped into each other at the Hastings conference in Chicago. We're taking things slowly, but it's good, Lucas. I'm happy. The revelation hung in the air, shifting the dynamic between us. The realization seemed to hit him harder than even Sophie's betrayal, the possibility of reconciliation. His safety net after Sophie's deception crumbling before his eyes. So, that's it? Lucas asked bitterly. You get your revenge, and I get nothing. The accusation stung, but I refused to be baited. This wasn't about revenge. It was about the truth. You deserve to know what kind of person she really is before you build a life with her, I said, standing up and smoothing my dress. What you do with that truth is up to you. James had remained silent during this exchange, clearly uncomfortable witnessing such a personal conversation. Now he stood as well. I should go, he said quietly. James, when you're ready to talk, if you're ever ready, I'll be there. Lucas didn't acknowledge him directly, only giving a small nod without looking up. I gathered my purse and the folder, leaving the evidence behind. Lucas would need it for whatever came next. Does she make you happy? Lucas asked as I turned to leave, his voice small. Happier than I did. I paused at the door, considering the question. It's different, I said finally. Different. The past year changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I loved you, he said quietly. Even through everything. I know that sounds impossible, but it's true. I believe you, I said, surprised to find that I did. But love isn't always enough, is it? Sometimes trust matters more. As I walked out of Bella's that night, I felt something I hadn't expected: peace. It's not triumph or vindication, or even relief. Just a quiet certainty that I had closed a door that needed closing. 8 months ago, the aftermath unfolded in ways none of us could have predicted. Sophie moved back to her hometown in Oregon, apparently to be near her family. As her due date approached, James followed, determined to be present for his child's birth and to take responsibility as a father. They aren't together romantically, too much damage had been done. But they're trying to establish a healthy co-parenting relationship for their son's sake. The baby was born 2 months after that night at Bella's Liam. 8 pounds, 4 ounces, with James's eyes and chin. Unmistakably, his father's son. Lucas moved to the company's Seattle office. A fresh start away from the whispers and pitying glances. We exchange occasional text birthdays, major holidays, but nothing substantial. I've heard from mutual friends that he's in therapy trying to understand the choices that led him to where he is. I hope he finds the answers he's looking for. As for me, Logan and I are still together. We bought a house in the suburbs 3 months ago. Nothing fancy, but it has a garden and enough space for his daughter from his previous marriage when she visits on weekends. We're talking about getting married next spring, a small ceremony with just family and close friends. Sometimes I think about how differently things might have turned out if James had never found the courage to tell the truth, or if I had chosen to keep Sophie's deception a secret. Would ignorance have been kinder? Would private truth have been enough? But then I remember the look on Lucas's face when he realized he'd been manipulated not just by Sophie, but by his own willingness to believe what was convenient rather than what was true. That moment of clarity, however painful, was necessary for him, for me, for all of us caught in Sophie's web of lies. The hardest lesson I've learned through all of this is that sometimes the people we love the most are capable of causing us the greatest pain. But the second hardest lesson is equally important. Surviving that pain doesn't make you bitter. It makes you wiser. I don't regret walking into Bella's that night. I don't regret exposing the truth, even publicly. Some revelations need witnesses to prevent them from being rewritten later. What I do regret, occasionally, are the 7 years I spent with someone who could walk away so easily. But then I remind myself that those years weren't wasted. They were preparing me for where I am now, for who I am now. And honestly, I like this version of me much better. She's stronger, clearer about what she wants, and less willing to compromise on the things that matter. Sometimes the greatest gift your betrayer can give you is the opportunity to rebuild yourself from the ground up, to create a life that fits who you've become rather than who you once were. So no, this isn't a story about revenge, though it might sound like one on the surface. It's a story about truth, about consequences, about the peace that comes from finally closing a door that needed to be closed even if someone else opened it first. Most importantly, it's about learning to trust yourself again when your trust in others has been shattered. 'Cause at the end of the day, that's the foundation everything else is built on.